pre-meeting of the Broadway City Council Tuesday, September the 6th. We have approval of minutes from August the 30th. Appeals, we have requests for waiver the noise ordinance on October 10th from 8 AM to 12 PM in Spanish Plaza. October 15th to 6 PM to 10 PM on South Reed Avenue.
No idea. South Reed, you said?
South Reed also.
Yeah, that South Reed is annual, that's fine.
November 19th, 11 AM to 5 PM in public safety Memorial Park. Public hearing states public hearing to consider adoption of the 2022-2023 general fund capital and convention center budgets.
Right, has this already been on the agenda once?
Yes.
So we're gonna carry this over a week?
Yep.
Thank you.
Presentation of petitions and other communications.
I got one question today. Can you do the outline that you do? I just go first reading.
Presentation of petitions and other communications to the council. Elizabeth Chipowich is requesting support for the homeless in Tillman's Corner.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Jones?
Yeah, I'd like to ask the administration, a number of months ago, we visited this at length, and y'all were putting together some processes to sort of identify all of those things, that the nonprofits, number of beds, all that. Is there a way that we can get that report, or do we have the specifics with regards to that? Because I think this is going to become an issue again.
I'm working on it. I'll have it by, Jamie should have it to me by today.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Laura Dickerson, proposing a business structure, to bring jobs and educational programs to city. Ronald Hunt, regarding budget ideas for the next fiscal year. Walter Moore Jr., lack of enforcement of the noise ordinance, and Cedric Miles, is asking why isn't the Harmon Thomas Rec included in the All-Star after-school program?
Carol, are you aware of the last two items on here? About the Baltimore, that's your district.
Yeah, Walter is on M Magazine on Chin Street, and that right next to the Hosey Weaver site. Hosey Weaver's been paving a section of I-10 or I-65 for last week. The truck went in that night, claiming that the tailgate is broken or keeping them up. I talked to the representative from Hosey Weaver, also to two of the vice presidents. They said they were gonna get it under control. That was last week. I don't know what's happened since then. The miles at Harmon Park, I'm unaware of any of that whatsoever. I do know that the city started this program, but just like the summer, they put some programs in some places, but not at all. So that'll be a question that needs to be answered by the Parks and Recreation Department.
Going back to Mr. Boyd, that's the sixth project that's going on?
Is it a what?
You said Jose Weaver? Oh.
Yeah, it's state, it's probably state,
State.
they're doing the highway, they're doing the highway, they're paving the highway. So they pave at night instead of the morning, so the trucks run at night. If you remember when we did the African Town Safe Zone, you'll remember me showing you a slide or a map where Jose Weaver's property is less than 10 foot from the next door property. So when the trucks come in and go down the road, it causes a lot of noise and it keeps people up at night. So, but for most of the city, they never experience it. It's just for the people that are in Magazine Point at Chin Street that are experiencing this constantly, every day, every night. They're hearing the pumps going on the asphalt mix, then they turn around hearing the trucks load and unload, and they hear the tailgate bang. Even with a rubber tailgate safety provider, the noise level is still above 85 decibels. And it's constant when you're doing major street projects and major highway projects. You asking me for a way to fix it?
No, just,
I don't know how we fix it. You know, the encroachment was done years before there was a master plan for the area, years before any type of planning and development was done to protect residential neighborhoods from encroaching businesses, especially when they're industrial. You know, so there's never been a master plan, there's never been a way to protect the community, there's never been anything other than a business there. Before that, Jordan Powell driving, I can't even remember them all, PH&J, all those guys were over there at the same time. And over time, development just reached out and touched the community in a place that it shouldn't have. Now we're faced with a difficult situation here. How do we mitigate noise at night, and how do we protect the community?
all right, we're here, Madam Clerk.
CIP resolutions held over 2027-38, authorized contract with Southern Sciences for 2022 CIP supervisor service.
Follow-up question on that. Since I know we passed the contracts last week, and this is the geotech, any ideas when we might see resurfacing? Will it be after the first of the year, Nick, or when do you think?
Probably the next month, so we've got a pre-construction meeting scheduled for this week. We'll get an idea of what their plan schedules are, and we'll know that there.
After that, okay.
Resolutions held over 01739, authorized agreement with Avenue Insights Analytics to help the city identify, collect sales, use, tax, and delinquent license revenue. 08740, approve purchase order of global industrial equipment for cooling fans for municipal garage. 08741, approve purchase order to Varsity Brands Holding Company for football goal posts and soccer goals for Dog River Proper Parks. 08742, approve purchase order for fuel for Wave Transit. 08743, approve purchase order to Falian Holdings for online training services. 09744, appropriate monies to, in the Rebuild Alabama Special Revenue Fund for Tiger Junior Avenue Broad Street project. 201745, authorized contract with Lewis Medical Services for deceased body transport services. 21746, authorized contract with EMS management and consultants for emergency medical services billing and support. 21747, authorized contract with Robert J. Baggett for oil water separator replacement for municipal garage. 37748, approve a certificate of public convenience and necessity to drop off transit to operate a shuttle service. 6749, authorized settlement agreement and release of claims. 01750, authorized intergovernmental agreement with Mobile County, Alabama for the development and expansion of Mobile County Sportsplex. Consent resolutions being introduced. 37751, 752, and 753 are recommending approval to the ABC Board for issuance of a special events retail liquor license for Saturdays at the Coop. For issuance of a retail beer, off-premises only, table wine on off-premises license to Mobile Oriental Market on Azalea Road. And recommending approval to the ABC Board for issuance of a lounge retail liquor class 2 package store license to One Stop Shop on Hillcrest Road.
We're good, Dr. Jones, Days, and Sheriff.
Yes.
Yes.
58754, assess cost for removal lease, Weed Lane Group 56. 6755, 756, 57, 58, 59, 61 are determined appropriations to Juvenile Studios Empowerment, UJ Robinson Memorial Center, Senior Citizen Services, Businesses via State Street Community Development Corporation, Country Club Estates Neighborhood Association, Sugar Creek Homeowners Association, American National Red Cross Serving Public Purpose and Approving Payments. Resolutions being introduced. 01762, authorized agreement with Unity Fiber for Regular Avenue Lighting, Airport Boulevard, Dolphin Street, and that's also 01763, 764, 765, 766, 767 are all regarding the Regular Avenue Lighting with AT&T, CenturyLink, Comcast
This long-awaited project, just to give everybody an update, this long-awaited project is finally moving forward. The final Broadway acquisition process has been completed. I want to thank Nick and Mr. Black and
Mr. O'Connor, got it.
that guy. I was not going to forget a guy. Everybody who worked on this, there were 45 parcels, around 45 parcels that had to be negotiated. Some of them extremely difficult. And Dean really pulled it off and made it happen. And my understanding is that the project will be ready to be bid at the end of the year, and hopefully, construction can start in the first part of next year.
Congratulations to you.
08768, approve purchase order to Broadway for garbage collection management system.
More information, on what this is.
Rottweiler, that's the system, that's just a renewal of the subscription, I believe, or maybe it's additional.
This is the update from, we used to have to take SIM cards out to get the data for this. This will allow, it's all cloud-based now, so there's a couple components that we had to upgrade to get to that level.
Is this for the tracking, the trucks and the
Correct.
routes and all that?
That's right, and we've been fielding it, and again, we didn't do this part you just talked about initially, and we realized that it's better if we can use the cloud base instead of having to have the drivers take these little chips out every time. So, at any rate,
Does this also do your route planning?
yeah, for the
Route
garbage,
planning
for the garbage it does,
Trash.
yes.
08769, approve purchase order to Gauze for body armor carrier vest for MPD, $20,553. 08770, approve purchase order to Site 1 Landscape Supply for irrigation controllers, sensors, cartridges, and cabinets for various city parks, $19,720. 08771, approve purchase order to CDW Government for Apple iPad Pro tablets and cases, Parks and Rec Department, $27,998.67. 08772, approve purchase order to Asplund Tree Expert for tree and tree limb removal on Dolphin Street, $109,000. 08773,
Hey,
approve.
hang on a second. Mr. Kerr. When was it, 2 weeks ago? They made me change my walking route, and on, O'Shell and on, God, I can't remember all the streets now, but who's responsible for removing the dead wood from these old oak trees? Once every year or so, there should be a pruning of the actually dead wood within the tree that falls out onto the streets. So who's responsible for that?
So, just to understand, you're talking about dead wood that's already been removed and taken down,
No,
or
I'm
dead wood
talking
in the
about-
tree?
I'm talking about the dead wood that's in the tree, like in my yard, I've got 300-year-old trees. So the limbs that hang over our yard, I have our guy come and take all the dead wood out. But for that hangs over the city's portion, somebody needs to come and prune all the dead wood out of the tree so it doesn't fall on somebody's car. I was walking Catherine, government at the loop, and I think it was old government. It's been a week where they changed routes, and there's a lot of streets that have trees that have very old limbs that you can see that are absolutely gone and just waiting to fall. So I'm just wondering, how are we handling that?
So right now, there's no citywide preventative maintenance plan, except for, so we have the canopy, ceiling, corridor, contracts that you've seen here. And then we have, our folks with contractors that work, the 311 calls or, any kind of emergency situation. Besides for that, that's where we're at right now, is just working through the emergency calls and then trying to get to a few additional pieces. But, at this point, there's been no citywide inventory or preventive maintenance plan scheduled.
Well, on the major corridors downtown, I mean, I think it would be, like I saw.
On the major
Yeah,
corridors.
so we've done most of the major corridors, government, Old Shell once,
On
Dolphin.
once, and this is the extension, this piece on here is the extension, the other, we're continuing down Dolphin.
Also on St. Louis Street, Sunday, there was a tree down by the old bankruptcy court. It seems like it's about to fall in the dang street, you know, it's pretty sick.
I know what you're talking about.
So, I mean, those, and they're showing up all over the place. Seems like the trees that have this fern that's growing on it, maybe this fern is absolutely killing the trees. I need to talk to Peter, I hadn't had a chance to do it yet. But, I mean, there's a way that we can, forget the word I wanna use, but, there's a way we can save these trees and may petrify them. But we could somewhat save the tree, you know, with some injections that I've seen in other tree cities. But we need to pay a little bit of attention, I guess, and the only reason I said it because I was actually on foot. I'm trying to lose a little bit of gut. So I was actually on foot, and there's some things we need to address with some of the trees, you know, especially for those that, I don't even know if we're allowed to touch some of the trees that are in the city right away that hang over on our own properties, but I do it because I know that every time the wind blows hard, I'm gonna have a nightmare to clean up. So, but for those that can't, we need to get something done because it's gonna become a major issue. Not a little one, but a major issue at some point.
Yeah, there's two things that you mentioned, Mark, that I think we need to take note of that are extremely important in this conversation that we've discussed, at least I've discussed a couple weeks ago. One is the inventory. That's extremely important because it's addressing everything William's talking about. We've got a laundry list, I'm sure. Nobody's come out west. I hardly see anybody out in my district that's doing this. It's all focused down here. We've got a ton of trees that have issues, just like he's talking about. But we don't know how many and what the extent of the work would be to get that done. The second thing that you mentioned is, and again, you mentioned this a week or so ago, it all deals with priorities. The problem is we have so many emergencies, we never get to this level. And this is why I asked, do we have the right budget going into the forestry piece? Because I don't think we do. We haven't even talked about the stunt fund, and I keep harping on this because every week I'm getting emails on this by different people in different neighborhoods. So it's telling me we have a systemic problem with this issue, and I don't think we've been able to realize what that scope is so we can effectively, we're just taking emergency after emergency. Every time I talk to Peter, he's in the middle of the road at 8:30 at night with a tree that's falling down. And that's the work that we're doing right now. We've got to be able to get in front of this instead of always being reactive to this. And yes, that takes money, but we need to identify what that is and what that scope is.
08773, approve purchase order to Insight Public Sector for desktop computers, $38,827.10. 08774, approve purchase order to Great Bar Electric Company for decorative street lighting poles and fixtures, traffic engineering, $40,111.68.
Hang on just a second.
Chairman.
I think there was a request that we fix some lights over at the stadium. Have we seen that yet? Or is that, we're still waiting on that, do you know? Have we seen a request that we fix some lights over at Lad Stadium? Have y'all seen it?
I haven't
Lights
seen
being
it.
painted? Haven't come in yet? Please, I mean, city clerk.
08775, approve purchase order to Struthers Recreation LLC for benches, trash receptacles, and picnic tables for various city parks, $108,038. 08776, approve purchase order to CDW Government LLC for network cameras with mounts, $25,000. 1777, adopt the 2022-2023 general fund, capital improvements fund, and convention center fund budgets. 25
Mr. President.
Yeah, Mr. Jones?
Yeah, so question here for us. I know there's a lot of people looking at a lot of different things. What is the process for getting our amendments in front of us in a timely manner so everybody can review those amendments, have that discussion before we get that to a vote? What do you see that process as it takes place and the timeline? I know this is initial read. I know also that we've got to vote on this thing here in a couple of weeks. So I'm assuming amendments probably need to be in this week.
The original timeline we adopted was to vote on the budget next week. So I think the answer would be, if you got an amendment you want to make in the budget, the quicker you can present it to everybody, the better. But I defer to Mr. Harlich. I think Mr. Jones asked about mechanics.
Yeah,
How
mechanics.
this
I mean, if somebody's got an amendment, we all need to see what that amendment is presented, questions asked.
Chris, didn't you send us an email on how to,
Yeah.
what the amendment ought to look like?
Yeah, so it's, the examples that I had, were really just budgets here by general fund or capital, whatever it is. It's hereby amended to remove, or reduce X line item by $100,000 and increase so-and-so line item by $100,000. So it's really just a sentence, and we could have it in, just like a whole list of them, I don't know how many there can be.
I guess my question is, are we gonna have another finance committee meeting or another committee of the whole to go over that in a special setting? Or are we gonna do that in the city council meeting next week?
I'd assume we would do it at the city council meeting next week.
Mr. President? Hello, Mr. Reynolds, Mr. Jones?
I think, we're gonna hold this over for 1 week, it'll be on the agenda next week. When we get to it, it'll be moved and seconded, and at that point, we can consider any, proposed amendments. And then once the amendments have been either approved or voted down, we end up with an amended document or an unamended, budget that we then vote on.
Okay, all right.
Question asked, Mr. Jones?
Yep.
Okay, Mr. Reynolds?
I was just gonna suggest that very same thing, offer up amendments next week when the item's on the floor. Now, if there was some, say, extraordinary change, that required holding over another week, then that's what we would have to do, I would say. But certainly shouldn't be our goal to try to have to get something to committee to consider it, but if we have to, we always could. Deadline is 20th?
Deadline is 20th.
To approve, or if we went past that, we would have to continue on this year's fiscal budget.
Which has been done countless times, so don't look at 20 experience. If you need to contact Sean.
Well, you're right, it has been done before. It isn't the best way to handle the budget. The best way to handle the budget is to pass it within the time frame set by the statute. And the earlier, if you're interested in proposing an amendment to the budget, the earlier you can do that, the better, the better. I think that, any budget amendment is gonna require 4 votes. And
Any budget amendment requires 5 votes, passing of the budget requires 4.
I thought we went through this.
Oh, we changed that?
After the budget is approved, if you have an amendment after the budget is approved, it's 5 votes. But right now, it's all 4 votes.
I just want to make that clear.
Mrs. Carroll, we can talk about it, but Ms. Carroll made a correct assumption of the law about 5 votes.
After the budget.
No, to make an amendment, period. To adopt the budget is 4, to make an amendment is 5.
Okay, well, then I stand corrected.
For amendments to the budget, when we're in the budget process.
Is that, do you agree with that?
Well, we can look at it between now and 10:30 and get it clear. I may be wrong, may be right.
It's important.
But it's an important part of passing the budget. Pass, 4 to pass, 5 to amend, if I remember right. I got caught with that. Remember? It caused a big stink.
I don't remember that, but.
That's it in this very room, that's right.
One other thing too, if you do have amendments, if you would share them with the rest of the council, so that we're not all caught off guard and surprised and expected to vote on something next Tuesday, that would certainly be appreciated.
Anyone else? Madam Clerk?
25778, accept temporary construction easement, miscellaneous drainage, group B. 60779, 780, authorizing settlement agreement and release of claims. Call for public hearings, 41781, call for public hearings to consider approval of the certificate of public convenience and necessity in Medevac, Alabama, to operate an ambulance service scheduled for September 20th. 41782, call for public hearings to rezone property located at 712, 716, and 718 Dolphin Island Parkway from R1 and R3 and B3 to R3, scheduled October 4th. Announcements.
Have that in front of the council.
Yeah, Mr. President.
Mr. Jones?
Just a question for this group. Last Thursday, the planning commission passed the master plan and the civic center codes. It will come to us, I'm guessing next week, will be on our agenda. Question for us, I want to ask, is there an appetite to open up an RFP for a master plan just to see what is out there? We've commissioned one consulting group that I think we paid $200,000 to get the master plan. That's the one that was adopted, was the civic center. It was a Shift East plan. It was adopted as a master plan. It's going to come to us. With that said, I know that there have been other master plans that have been discussed that we have not seen. What should we do with those? I mean, that's something that we need to answer. Should we just adopt this? We don't know what's out there is what I'm hearing. So do we ask the administration to put an RFP out for 60 days, see what comes back in? There may be an appetite for it, there may not be. Right now, that's a big question mark. So I just want to throw that question out to this group. And then based on your thoughts, we move one way or the other.
Mr. Carter?
Yeah, I don't even know where to begin with this. The Corps of Engineers seems to be a big driver in this and the development of a true master plan for the civic center site. It's the driver, and the Corps wants to be able to have a shovel in the ground by January 1st, and I think that their yearly budget is driving their thought pattern and how funds are allocated for what they do. However, the Corps still hasn't covered the ARB hurdle, and it's kind of being rushed through the process in the planning commission. As I stated to you guys before, I don't even know how we subdivided it without council approval, because that is a council issue. I don't know how, or if they have a ground lease, because the ground lease, from what I understand, I can't find the records or anywhere else, and that is a council issue. All those things would be clear if we had a master plan in place and they were moving forward. Also, I went back and looked at the planning commission's meeting. I don't know what type of master plan is coming, but I do know that we're setting a dangerous precedent in the way that we're proceeding with this, because there are 3 areas of undefined or special districts in downtown. the Civic Center, the area east of the Civic Center down here on the other side of I-10, and also the old press register building. So we're saying that if we do this way, then we're just gonna be able to do whatever we want on these other two pieces of parcels without a proper master plan in place, without development incentives in place, and all these other things. There clearly needs to be a master plan here, and I think that we should request an RFP for this site. Go out. In my mind, I'd like to try to help the Corps as best as I can, but we clearly need a master plan. Just Africa Town in itself and the encroachment of industrial business right up against people's property is clearly a reason to have a master plan. You know, we have neighbors that live right there. I live right there. My friends and family that grew up are less than 70 yards across the street from the site. There clearly needs to be a plan with people that are involved in the community and neighborhoods that are also aware and truly aware of what may be coming down the street, as opposed to just saying, here's a zoning idea, let's move forward with it. So if we could, as a council, request that, maybe the timing needs to be a little bit shorter based on what the Corps is trying to do, but there needs to be a true master plan. Let's go back. Some of the people have been saying that the plan from EDSA was a master plan, and that the houses that were on the lot was the intent. That was not the intent. If you remember, you and I were here, it was just a ground filler for an appearance on a piece of paper because they didn't want to show the parking lot. The DDD came later. So there has truly been no guideline of a master plan for the Civic Center lot ever. It's been left out. Just like the one across the street, right up there. Just like the one right down the street at the old press register building. So if we could, council request the request for proposal.
Mr. Davis, I don't know why you'd ask for a request for proposal when you don't have a master plan.
It would be
It was for the master plan.
for the master plan.
I thought the request for proposals for utilization of the space.
We want, I'd love to see a request for proposal for a true master plan and a planning process for the Civic Center zone.
Mr. President, I thought I was one way on this, and now I'm on another way, and I do see the merit of what was approved by the Planning Commission, and some very good points were raised throughout the process of getting it through the Planning Commission, that sometimes it's hard to attract a developer. I mean, we gotta pay for this, so that's my number one concern, is how are we gonna pay for this? So, in order to attract a developer in with what they understand as a blank slate, I think that's been tried over the years, where a developer comes in and then they come up with these plans that are gonna tear down the Civic Center and put an amphitheater and all this retail and everything else in there, and then the public doesn't want that to happen there. So, with the zoning in place, for these parcels throughout the site, it narrows the focus of any developer, where they can come in and say, okay, these are the parameters we have to work in. It's not just, me drawing whatever I want, what I think it would be ideal for. So I think there is some merit to having that zoning in some way, shape, or form, like what the Planning Commission approved, and they had some modifications to it regarding the Church Street East area over there. So if we are going to ask for a request for proposal, number one, I'd like to know, didn't we do that? When's the last time we did that?
2018,
So 2018, we asked for a request for proposal, and we got two responses back.
But that was for utilization.
That was utilization, it wasn't a
That
master
was
plan.
utilization. That wasn't-
Understood.
That was not a master plan.
I understand, and so my question would be is if we did pass the zoning change in the area and it narrowed the focus of what could happen based on all the feedback from the public and everything else, do we think we'd get good responses, and is 60 days, a long enough time period? I guess that may be a question from you all, if we would get some responses, because I'd like to get some responses. I'd like to find a partner in this, because, the price tags I've seen is a whole lot of burden on the taxpayer, and we gotta figure out a way to pay for
the one thing that I learned, we gotta have a master plan before we can do the zoning. So that's why I'm saying, and we've seen one, and let's be clear, the plan that was presented to us from the consultants is a master plan, and that's the one that's gonna be recommended to us to adopt. The only question that I have out there is, what else is out there? We don't know. There's a big question mark there. That's the one, the city commission, that's the one we have seen, that's the one that's been presented to the public. I've heard that there are others out there, but we have not been formally presented any other plans outside of the one that has been coming through, planning commission to us. So, I know we've done this in the past. I by no means want to continue to delay and stall and not do anything, because look where we are. If we'd have done this 10 years ago, we wouldn't be where we are today. And it definitely wouldn't be costing us as much. With that said, I think we owe it to the citizens of the city to make sure that if there is a developer, to Ben's point, that wants to come in and present a formal proposal that is liked by the majority of the city, there's a big question mark. And are we ever gonna get there? You know, there's a lot of discussion on both sides. I think we can, but it's gotta be articulated correctly, it's gotta be presented, it's gotta be communicated, and then we need to have the discussions. Right now, we have a plan, and that's all we have. You know, the only question I have is, I believe there's another plan out there. Do we want to open up a window and see if there's another organization wants to put a formal master plan on the table for the city?
Ms. Gregory?
Yeah. I agree with a lot of what's been said, but I think we keep coming back to the same issue again. Our role right now is trying to figure out what to do with those buildings over there, and we can do that. But the real problem and the driver, like William says, is the Corps of Engineers that wants to build a building over there, and they are apparently full steam ahead needing to build a building. So how do we deal with that? This whole master plan and what goes where and all the rest of the footprint? To me, that could actually come later if possible, because that's where all the conflict is. And how's it gonna look? Where are the homes gonna be? Are they multifamily? Are they single family? Is retail gonna be allowed? You know, what's gonna be allowed on the rest of the footprint? But I think we as a council have looked at and agreed that we gotta do something with at least 2 of those buildings over there, potentially 3 of them, arena, you know. And for most everybody in the city, I think they all agree with that side of it. It's the rest of it that we can't come to an agreement on, except for the fact that the Corps of Engineers wants to build a building and they are moving ahead. So how do we, you know?
I think it will take some thought. And did you play JK since I last played?
Did what?
Did you play JK since I last played?
No, this is the breast cancer bracelet. John Williams gave us all these.
Awesome. I'm just getting close. Well, I wasn't finished. In respect to the 3 buildings, I can't remember the year, and I went back and looked for it. In the planning process for the building, we've only looked at one aspect of it. I mean, why haven't we looked at the aspect of giving ownership of the building to a developer over a period of time as ownership for the cost of development, with them bringing in the acts in all the other revenue, and them driving it with them even having namesake to the building until the debt is paid off. We haven't looked at that aspect yet. We haven't looked at accentuating multiple developers at one time on the site with direct ownership of the site until the debt is paid off. We haven't looked at so many other options here for true redevelopment. All we've looked at is the one item that we have this far with Populous. And like I said, the Populous approach was I really liked it, you know, but the problem is one, $168 million, we're tearing down either one or the other, which is a usable building. There's no other usable building of that size in our city that we're tearing down. It's gonna cost us $1 million to tear it down and better in that aspect when we have a facility that is totally usable. In my mind, that's absolutely crazy, you know, but if I had to choose from any of the 2 or 3 options that were given, then that's what I'm faced with. But still yet, there are, I think, better ways that we can approach this that we haven't even looked at yet. So I think that we need to slow this down again and truly have a master plan. In response to your zoning, zoning is not a master plan. It is only an aspect or a piece of a truly put together master plan. Zoning in itself will never be a master plan.
But I think, talking about who's gonna pay for the Civic Center and getting somebody on board, as I recall in some of the meetings we had from 2018 forward, not the first developer wanted anything to do with that building over there, because they didn't feel like they would ever make any profit off of it. So as we all understood from that day forward, that was the city's responsibility. The only thing they ever wanted to do was knock it down and put something else up there, you know, so I think that is an issue that.
The only way, I have to admit to a great deal of frustration with respect to this issue. We've had this white elephant over there for 15 years. And in that period of time, we have had multiple plans come forward for its use, and the city has never taken any action with it. And in the meantime, it just sits over there and gets crummier and crummier and crummier every single day. And as I said the last time this issue came up, if we're waiting for the day when all 200,000 people in this city make a ring around that piece of property and sing Kumbaya, that day's never coming. And we're gonna be sitting there with that white elephant from now till hell freezes over. If there were people who were really and truly interested, private developers, we would have heard from them by now. I don't think that putting out another RFP is gonna help. The other thing about that is any private developer who wants to put a bunch of money in there is gonna wanna make money, which means they're gonna wanna have retail and a lot of things over there that the people in Church Street East don't want over there. No matter what we do, it's gonna antagonize the people. And we can stretch this out, we can delay it, we can slow it down, we can do whatever we want to, and then 5 years from now, we'll be sitting there exactly where we are today, but with a building that's in even worse shape.
Well, again, I still say we need to slow this down, take a better look at it. I can't remember if was it Spec that did the plan with the interior completions and ownership? I can't remember. It's still fog in my head and I haven't been able to work it out. But, you know, Ronnie Snyder sent me an email yesterday. The winds, the lanes on Palmetto Street, and it continued to grow every day from Thursday. These people actually live less than 100 yards from what we're trying to do, some even less than a half a mile or a quarter mile. These are the people that are truly affected by what you're doing down here. It's not the people that live way out in District 6. I know they have a concern for the center, but
They are
I'm
citizens of the
I'm
city of Mobile.
speaking, Mr. Joel Davis. I didn't interrupt you. I mean, they don't live beside it or see it or have to deal with the impact of it in their direct community and quality of life every day. They don't. The people that do are the people that are speaking out. They deserve to be heard, they deserve to have a master plan, and they deserve to have a plan that works to the best of its ability, even if it's not 100%, but a plan that works to the best of the ability of the community that's living around.
Mr. Jonathan, we'll hear from the mayor.
Yeah, 2 things. Number one, Joe, I don't disagree with you. The problem is that comes with a $200 million price tag. You and I are both of this mindset. We don't like seeing that much debt piling as a the city, so that's the big question mark, and I'm not how we're gonna pay for that. William, I get your point, but here's the other piece. If you buy a home on Church Street next to the Civic Center, you assume a certain amount of risk for wanting to live in the entertainment district. There is risk there. I've lived in Midtown, I lived in Midtown because I wanted to live near the entertainment district. So, you know, there's two sides of that coin too. Yes, you get a voice, yes, you get a vote, but by living next to the Civic Center, you're assuming risk of living by the Civic Center and all the things that is associated with that.
I'll follow up, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor.
So, first off, I'd say that zoning is the first step. Certainly, it's not first, it's second, you know, in a master plan, it fits in there somewhere. Okay, so, it's never been zoned, and we've suffered from people looking at it, just like council said, they think it's a blank slate, so they spend their time, they spend our time, you know, coming up with these ideas that we try to sort out. The sorting has been going on for a long time. The reason the planning commission made the change to the plan that was presented was the sensitivity for those that live close by. Okay, that's why they changed the Lafayette Street corridor. As far as your comment about we haven't considered a cost sharing of someone, you really don't know what we've considered. It's an open book. I mean, not an open. It is an open process where if somebody comes in here and says, we want to own the Civic Center, and they're willing to put their money in it, more power to them. This zoning that took place and what will be coming to y'all has nothing to do with the things that we're looking at, the various options that we're looking at. And so for the developer that wants to come in, and we haven't found him yet, okay, that wants to put really hardly any money in the project, okay? So what we're trying to do, with what we did with Populous, was determine if we don't ever find that person that wants to come in and sink their money into it, then how are we going to fix what's there? And what is it going to cost? And that's what we have with the Populous plan. So it's maybe not the very best thing that happens, but it's certainly something that we know, now we know a cost, and then we've got to figure out if we're going to do this, how we handle it. But nothing happens without y'all's approval. Even what the planning commission, you know, came up with, it comes to y'all. When it comes to the Corps of Engineers building on that ground lease, it will ultimately come to y'all. And we did not tee that up, and well, let me say this, the intent was not to tee it up to make it look like it was an absolute done deal. But for the last 7 years, 8 years, we've been trying to find somebody that would do something on that property. And so the Corps said that they would like to have that building there, that there's been an office building, as there's been a hotel drawn on that site, you know, since, I can't remember when the first plan was done. And so the Corps are the only people that we know that have been willing to step up and say they will spend and do 190,000, I think, square foot building on that site. I don't know another company in Mobile that's gonna build almost 200,000 square feet of office space and put it, put 800 employees in it. And so, yes, maybe somebody can come along and do that, but there's nobody that has stepped up and said, we've got the ability to do that, here's our money, and this is what we're going to do. But it isn't because we have blocked them out, okay? And going back to the Corps' plan, Colonel DeLapp and I talked to the Colonel over there probably a week ago and said, look, because of your timeline and the timeline we've agreed upon, it's making people anxious thinking we're just gonna shove it down the throat. He agreed, look, let's just slow down. Let's back this up. And so when it comes to the future engagement with the ARB, you know, there's not a gun at your head or at our head. There is a timeline where if we don't do something, you will lose that opportunity. And then we'll be sitting here with nothing. And so is that bird in the hand, you know, worth two in the bush? You know, I think that we have an opportunity to work with the Corps of Engineers to get a building and have those employees there and additional employees fill the GSA buildings that will be vacated in the downtown area. That is the thought process that we have gone through, to get to where we are. Last week, we went to, 2 weeks ago, we went to Atlanta to look at a couple of developments by a developer that says they've got a master plan, or they've got something they want to present for this civic center site. Stop, don't do anything, okay? So we said, fine, we'll slow this thing down a little bit. And so the developer told us, when we took this property, we had a master plan. They gave us a master plan. It didn't work. We're spending our money. We threw it away. So what they did was they took the zoning and they came up with what they could put on that piece of property that they thought would make money, and they were willing to invest their money in it. And so, yes, we can do a master plan, and will it answer all the questions that you just said? No, because I don't know how you have any more community engagement than what's gone on over the last several years or decades, at least a decade, about that plan. It's from about 2007. So if you want to slow it down, you want a master plan, we'll certainly consider that. I do not think it's going to answer the questions that you are saying that of your concerns. So that's my personal opinion.
One question in response to that.
Mr. Carroll, I think Mr. Jones. Okay, Mr. Jones.
Just regarding the timeline, what timeline are we on? What's our drop dead date to have an answer back to the Corps?
Yeah. So, real quick, so there were kind of three timelines that we were working to facilitate, mainly the Corps, which was the leading one, which they wanted to break ground around 1st of January. To do that, there's a lot of steps: zoning, a concept master plan, in addition to ARB review and approval by the council on every step, to include the ground lease, etc. So there's a lot of steps, and it is ambitious in terms of trying to get done, but we laid it out in a way we thought it could get done. Parallel to that, you had the populace piece, which I just want to remind the council, their task and purpose was mainly to look only at the theater, the civic center, number one, and the theater and that complex of buildings, and do a general master plan for the site, knowing that what they were charged with looking at, and give us that option. So to date, I would say it's safe to say that if you look at the overall site, and if we were putting out an RFP for the development of the site, we would likely hand the developer, or put out the RFP, that the city, if the city generally agrees with the shift to the east concept that Populous came up with versus the one that centers on just the arena, that concept would be a requirement, and that there would be an office building in the corner with a parking deck generally located where we had it. And how they shape it and what do they put around it is up to them. But the rest of the site, based on the current zoning, would be open for them to come up with that plan on doing that. But those components, which we have long decided are important and integral, to include keeping the arena, having some type of people there during the day in an office building, which is key to activating that site, and having a parking deck to replace the ground parking is important. So I just say that those three pieces, if we were to put an RFP, would stay in that RFP, and they would fill in the rest of the site with things that they want to do, which we would evaluate. And I think the developers that Mr. Jones is talking about are aware that that's probably what's required. If a proposal comes in without the Civic Center, the feedback we've received over multiple years and multiple engagements with the public generally does not land well. So I think that's important. To your timeline, 1 January, and all these elements will come through either the Planning Commission, ARB, and the council for a final approval. I would expect the ground lease to come to the council before Thanksgiving, and the Corps then has to do its final contract with its developer around the first week of December. That's their timeline. So before Thanksgiving, I think you should expect to see the ground lease come forward between that developer for the Corps building and that parcel and the city.
Mr. Jones, you finish?
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Carroll?
Once again, I'm very aware of the Corps. The Corps is operating as this is already a done deal. I've spoken with everybody up the chain except for the colonel itself. Also took the time to talk to the developer. I'm also aware that there's a letter of intent that's signed by the city. Letter of intent. The core, it's okay to put the building there, but you can't put it out there without a master plan. And that's what I keep saying to you, or keep asking, I shouldn't say saying. We have to have a solid master plan to develop the area. We're not even considering in just developing the area, the other unintended consequences that may arise because of the bridge and the closing of Claiborne Street. We don't know what the traffic flow is gonna be like when the residential traffic that takes Claiborne round to down the bay on the other side of Canal Street is gonna do. That traffic is gonna redivert where, go around and come through the diamond that we don't know is gonna be there according to both Thompson and Bolter. They don't know what's gonna happen there. The diamond, they're saying, is already a bad design. So what's gonna happen? Church Street is gonna become live, Lawrence Street is gonna become even liver. The additional traffic is either gonna go Church Street or Lawrence Street, just by speculation. So we don't even know what's gonna happen there. When we take up the 1,250 pieces of asphalt out there and only put 1,000 parking spaces back, we're already 250 parking spaces shy, plus the core fleet that's gonna be, I think, 60 vehicles that are gonna be there permanently, plus whatever development that's gonna have to use the parking lot later in the future. We all know that when we have events there, it's gonna crowd the neighborhoods. That happens already. But still, yet, we need a plan to know how the community is gonna be affected, how and what the development's gonna have to do to use it, adequate for quality. Nobody's saying it's a bad idea at all. We're simply saying that it has to have a master plan that everybody understands.
Mr. President?
Mr. Reynolds, then go ahead and there.
All right, so basically what we're after right now is, if we're gonna find somebody that's gonna be our partner to help us pay for all this, then we need to set the parameters in such a way to attract people that are gonna, essentially adopt the civic center as it sits, remodeled or whatever, in order to mitigate a lot of the public's concern. Church Street East, as that community, some protections there, which I think what the planning commission did is adequate by limiting it to 3 stories so that you can have parking underneath the structure, and then that tiered effect on the next zoning level over. I think that accommodates them in a very good way. And if we have somewhat open zoning, or the most broad zoning possible in the remaining areas, including where the core site would be, then it would be, I would say, the most attractive thing that we could put out to a developer for them to want to participate in this. I don't want to limit them in such a way where they can't make money and make it profitable for taking on the white elephant, as Mr. Daves suggests. So, another thing is a master plan. I don't know what a master plan is. And we can come up with some off-the-wall definition of a master plan, or what our experiences of over the years have told us what a master plan, but the fact is, our ordinance don't define what a master plan is. So essentially, we can make a master plan whatever we want it to be, and if our goal is to figure out a way to lose this $2 million cost on the taxpayer every year, and put something there that's gonna attract people to our city and be an entertainment venue and have some civic access to it, then it would it would be the best thing we can do to address those immediate concerns in our zoning. Call the zoning a master plan if we want to, because we can define master plan however we like, and then leave the other areas as broad and open as we can be, so that we can attract developers from all walks of life.
Mr. President, guys, it's 10 o'clock. I really appreciate the conversation on this day, but we're not gonna solve it right now before 10:30.
There's nothing on the agenda.
It's nothing on,
It's just general
Just
discussion.
general discussion today and fruitful general discussion for a direction that I think we possibly may need to go in. I think there needs to be some additional conversation and communication between the administration and the council and district, to see how we're gonna approach this. In my mind, I just replayed the conversation, the biggest part of this is $168 million on a proposal from Populous. Are we really gonna move forward with a proposal for $168 million? And if so, what are we gonna do? We're gonna sell paper for it, or, we're gonna do something else, or we're gonna have a developer come in and own the building and lease it. So there are a lot of questions that yet have to be asked, even about the 3 buildings moving forward before we tear up a whole lot of space in the parking lot. The other thing in my mind is that the city's on the hook for $25 million for a parking deck. There's a lot of decisions that have to be made here as we work our way through developing a true master plan of this type. So, I'm gonna end my comments here on this today, and hopefully over the next week or so, we can all come to some type of consensus on what we're gonna do.
Anything else from this council? Anything from the administration?
Just check your email, I sent y'all the information for the home.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, we'll see each other at 10:30.
I think they're helpful discussions.